All right, Joel, we should be live streaming right now. So, welcome everybody to the Benchworks podcast, the podcast for bench jewelers. I've discovered that there's a medical company that has trademarked the word Benchworks, but they are in a completely different industry and they don't have a, what's it called, a something 41, uh, category 41 uh, trademark, and so I don't think I'm infringing, especially if I call this Benchworks, the podcast for bench jewelers. So that's sort of the new branding on this whole baby. What's the deal? The format here today, our topic, it's going to be the price of gold and how is it affecting our businesses, your
and silver,
business. Say again.
and silver.
Oh, and silver, yeah. The price of precious metals and how it is affecting our businesses and things that we can do about it. And speaking of things we can do about it, I have a little surprise announcement towards the end of the podcast. We encourage the live stream is may seem awkward at times because like this is live TV. Sometimes we'll maybe say stuff we shouldn't have said. Maybe we use language that we shouldn't use. But this is live TV, folks. And the reason it's live TV is because we encourage and really hope for audience participation. So if you're on YouTube right now watching this live stream, use the chat function to come in. I can see your chats. I'll read your questions and or comments to the public, and that's the way that you can participate. I hope this audience will grow to the point that we have really active audience participation. If in fact, though, you are watching this as a recording, because this will get posted to the YouTube channel as an archived video, if you're watching it that way, participate in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going. What are you doing? It's my intent here. Joel has probably given more thought and done more research on this than I have, so I'm going to let him. Uh, I don't know about dominate the conversation, but I'm going to let him sort of lead the direction of the conversation. He read off to me at least half a dozen, if not more, sort of aspects of the price of precious metals that he wants to comment on. So this is my friend Joel McFadden. If you're already a subscriber to uh, my YouTube channel, and if you're just been in the jewelry industry for very long, you've probably heard his name. He's one of the three mentor jewelers designated as such by MJSA some years ago when we were working on a custom, and also one of the, I think he was like the inaugural or at least one of the, what was our chairman or something of the,
Director of the Council of Custom Jewelers,
that's it, director of the Council of Custom Jewelers,
which was
Joel.
pretty cool. That was
That
a
was
cool
pretty
thing.
cool. I was really disappointed that more didn't come out of that, frankly. I think MJSA was trying to, always membership is always an issue for any organization like that. And I think that it didn't necessarily produce a huge boon in membership at the time. So that program got dropped eventually. But I think the whole idea of it was amazing. And Joel and I still talk about trying to revive some aspect of that. Anyway, enough of me rambling on. Joel, take it away.
Yeah. So something that has been a big concern for me has been the volatility in the gold and silver markets. Um, we don't have inventory. We're a no inventory model. We just do custom and repairs and fabrication and stuff like that. We are going to move towards creating some of our own inventory, but I think we're lucky that in the shop here I don't carry inventory because it's almost like last week or two you'd have to change the prices of it almost every day.
Hmm.
Um, but I know that there's been a lot of talk about how high is gold going to go, what's causing it to go up, and how do I deal with it. So I think the first thing I wanted to talk about was the vulnerability of the gold market and what's causing it. And I think some jewelers I've heard some jewelers feel like it's the jewelry industry is causing gold, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think that the gold market is, I think it's uncertainty about the economy. It's some larger people, banks, or some organizations playing and manipulating it. And I don't think it's necessarily to try to drive the value of the gold up, but I think people are trying to make money off of it. Like if you knew last week that like for example, silver was going to go from what $68 an ounce to $117 an ounce and then back to $75 an ounce in a matter of the weekend, if you could play that, you could make some serious money. And I think that that's the thing that's been causing the gold market. And people are concerned about the tariffs and they're concerned about wars. And I think people are more interested in buying gold than in as a hedge than they are in buying dollars or bonds or stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. There's an ancient Chinese curse I've heard that goes something like "May you live in interesting times," and
Yeah.
I would say that certainly applies to right now. What little bit of research I've done would cause me to agree with you to a great deal. I think the jewelry industry use of gold or precious metals is pretty steady, so we're not causing fluctuations. We are subject to the consequences of fluctuations to a great extent. And, it may, I hope you guys were paying attention when Joel was saying we're a no inventory model. Myself, I don't have a store. So, and most of my work is online. I keep a very small inventory, mostly just to be able to demonstrate the skill I use in creating the jewelry, but I don't try and have something for everybody for sure. Most of my stuff is made, uh, custom made for the client on the spot. So that helps because something a lot of people do not factor in to the prices of the things that they're selling is the cost of holding inventory. It's kind of a
Oh
hidden,
yeah.
it's a hidden cost. And if you have $100,000 tied up in precious metal inventory, that's $100,000. It could be making you money someplace else. Definitely making you money someplace else um, instead of just sitting in your safe or sitting in your display cases. Now, an argument could be made that with the recent upsurge in gold prices, maybe you're making money on that, but that's not money you can use, unless you
Right.
liquidate your inventory, which doesn't seem very smart. So, and I think, the uncertain times that you mentioned certainly play a factor. The recent sell off, like we were up, what was gold price? What was it? What did it hit top end? Do you remember?
58, 5,800, I
Yeah, it
believe.
was it was pushing $6,000 an ounce, and then there was a sell off too, and
Right.
it's been pretty stable around 5,000 bucks here recently.
Right.
Um,
And I think that's where it's going to stay for a while.
Yeah, I see it going up, but more slowly. I think, when it got so much, there was liquidity. People, the big players, the whales, were having liquidity issues, and they decided to sell
Well,
off and
actually,
profit taking.
my understanding of what happened was that, I mean, if you look at the chart for the last 3 months, it's insane. I mean, we started at 42, we went to 56 plus, then we went back down to 44, and we're at 5,000 now. What a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize it except I lived in this market, this area of the country for a while, is hedging. There are people that certain players are permitted to buy gold and only put down 10% of what they're buying.
Hmm.
And my understanding, especially for gold and silver, is that some organization called that, and that's when the gold just tumbled. People
Hmm.
were buying, so you buy $10,000 on the gold, but you only have to put down 1,000 unless the market calls it. And I think that what happened is some of the markets called those, and those people had to liquidate, and the price just tumbled. but then it came right back, I think. But
Explain
go ahead.
explain to me if you can the difference between hedging and futures.
Well, it's the same thing. You're
Yeah.
buying futures, um, but certain people have a certain enough amount of money and liquidity are allowed to just put down 10% as a promissory note that they have that money. But when the market gets as volatile as it is, some of these trading organizations are call on it. I mean, there's a lot of hedge funds. People buy hedging. I don't really completely understand it, but they do it with a lot of commodities. Like oil is hedged a lot. The market is hedged. There are people that bet on Wall Street quite a bit, and they don't have to put all the money down.
All right.
And I think that makes it hard for us as jewelers to relate to what causes the market to be volatile. So, but I think it's interesting to know what's causing it. And I have customers that come in all the time and they say, the price of gold is really high, or the price of gold is low, or what's going on. And I say the price of gold never really changes because that's the standard. It's the value of our dollar that changes all the time.
Right.
You have to think about it that way. And I think if you think about it that way, the gold becomes more reasonable because at the same time, gold has become more expensive. Everything else has become more expensive. Groceries have become more expensive, and other things like that have become more. Housing is more expensive. Um, so if you look at it that way, you realize it's really that the dollar is devalued quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, that was one of the primary, I think one of the primary uses of buying and perhaps holding gold, at least maybe physical gold or on paper, was a hedge against inflation because, the dollar become as inflation kicks in, the dollar or any currency with inflation becomes less valuable. It takes, you know, 5,600 Colombian pesos to buy the same eggs that it costs us $6 for, or something like that, because
Yeah.
inflation at some point hit that. And I'm talking out of my realm, really. I'm not a financier. I'm kind of a dumb bench jeweler, really, when it comes to this kind of stuff. So I think you probably know a little more about it than I do. But
Uh,
typically, here's something that was interesting, though. Let me just add, historically, the price of gold would be an inverse to stock prices, right? As stock prices gained ground, the price of gold would go down. And then when times got uncertain and stocks started crashing, the value of gold would typically go up, at least against the dollar. But uh, they became coupled. I think
yeah.
that's maybe a good terminology. But it's a couple decades ago. And so as stocks rise, the price of gold rises, and I'm not sure that it's not going through some minor decoupling now again. What do you think about that?
Well, I think here's something interesting to consider is that the president announced a new Fed chairman incoming
That
about
was
the same
supposed.
time.
Mhm.
Yeah, about the same time this volatility is going on.
Right.
And I know that the Fed can do a lot of things to manipulate the markets, and I think it can manipulate the gold price too. If money is cheaper to get a hold of from the banking, you know, when the interest rates are really low, banks feel the desire to lend money to people. If the
Hmm.
interest rate's really high, they just lend it to the government or they buy bonds and stuff. I don't know exactly how that works, but I think what
Right.
we need to talk though about is how craftspeople can deal with this.
Right.
And I think for me, something that I learned a long time ago, and I think my business partner and girlfriend really hammered home to me was that we as artists, bench jewelers, and metal workers, we tend to think about an object and the price of the object. And I'll give you an interesting example. We have to make a bracelet for a friend of mine. And it's just an amber bracelet with roping and stuff like that. So I've been looking at different technical ways of doing it. And I go on a site like Etsy and I see these bracelets for men that are $50 or $100. But then I saw one that I thought was pretty cool that was done by a famous jewelry designer, and it was no different than the Etsy ones. It might have been manufactured a little bit better, but it was $500. The materials themselves were the same,
Hmm.
7 millimeter amber beads on paracord with a silver clasp. So you got one company selling that for $50 and another guy selling it for $500. And I think it's a matter of quality and workmanship and branding. And I think that's a big thing. I mean, I'm looking a lot at diamonds that are falling out of jewelry all the time because they're mass produced and stuff, or things that say they're silver and then you get it and it says silver over brass or copper or whatever. Craftspeople have got to realize that you cannot price things based on materials. And today, it's tough. I think the toughest part, anyway. So back to my point is that you've got to charge for your labor. Your labor and your design has to be the primary thing that earns you a living.
Hmm.
So, Bonnie is always saying, okay, if you're going to spend an hour on the bench for that, we need to charge $200. And I'm like, but I'm just doing that. It doesn't matter. It's still an hour on the bench.
Hmm.
And I think craftspeople have got to learn that. You know, I say, look at it this way: if you went out and got a job in the real world, let's say, you're going to make $30 an hour or 40 or $25, who knows, based on what the job is and all that. But if you can't make that plus a profit sitting at your jeweler's bench, then you're not pricing things right.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people undervalue themselves a ton. I mean, one way that I started looking at it years ago, I mean, going back to the beginning of my career, I was happy to to make very little, just cover my cost during my learning phase. But eventually, I decided this was a fairly serious business, and eventually, I had enough time and grade on the bench that I started comparing it to other professions, and I consider myself a professional at that time. And I thought, well, let's see, the lawyer that I'm paying back then $135 an hour for went to school for what, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years, something like that. Well, I realized that I had 25 years in the industry already. So I had more time and grade than my lawyer, and why shouldn't I be making as much as they are? And
Yeah.
so that's how I began looking at it. But this brings up another aspect of it. I mean, back then, gold was, I don't know, somewhere between 150 and $700 an ounce. And I decided that I was going to make a certain percentage markup. Okay. And that seemed very fair, kind of an industry standard. At this point though, when the price of gold is so high, if you apply that same markup, you're making a lot more money for each transaction. For every 10 grams of 14 karat you sell, I remember for literally decades, I sold 14 karat for $14 a gram, and then of
Wow.
course it started edging up, after that. But my point is, do you apply the same markup now, or do you take a smaller markup to try and keep your clients in the game of buying precious metals? I know how I feel about it, but what do you think, Joel?
I think it goes back to when the rap report started getting leaked to the public. And I think that was like 20 years ago. And I used to joke that a customer might come into a jewelry store, a traditional jewelry store, and know the prices of diamonds better than the salespeople that were at the counter.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so if you tell somebody that a 1 carat diamond is $8,000, they'd go, but I can get it for $4,000 elsewhere, and the salespeople wouldn't really necessarily know how to respond to that. And I think the problem there, so bring it forward to gold and silver. When your customer walks in today, they know what gold costs. I had a customer here just the other day. He says, "Quote me, gold should be this much dollars a penny weight." I'm like, okay. I'll have to charge you that for the gold I put in there. However, I have to charge a markup on the gold for converting it from little dots and beads to the insert that you want. And then I have to charge you the labor to design the piece and put the piece in your ring.
Right.
And he seemed okay with that. People pretty much, I think today, the customer doesn't want to feel like you're ripping them off on the cost of materials, but they usually are okay with you charging for labor. Um, it goes back, God, 20 something years ago. I had a tool and die maker come into my shop and wanted his ring sized up, and I told him what it was going to be. It was like $85. And he said, "That's absurd. I could do it myself if I just had the tools." So I just said, "Okay, well, there's my bench. I'm going to lunch. You've got 30 minutes to do whatever you want, and good luck." And he looked at me. He says, "I don't know what to do with these tools." I said, "Oh, well, maybe that's what you're paying me for." And it's just like you're saying. How many years have you got at the bench, right?
Hmm. Well,
So
50 now. Not, I know
yeah,
I only look 35, but
you look better than me, and you're older
well,
than me. So
I don't know about that. But
I think that's the thing. It's how you present your pricing. I think you
mhm.
do have to have a markup on the metal, and I think more than that. I mean, the big thing that's changed in my mind is I look at gold prices at least twice a day.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well, I
we're
think
also telling people that we don't lock in the price until they make their deposit.
yeah, that's what I do too. When I locked in, actually, I've got a pretty big project going on right now, and I was able to lock my client in at 48.50, which made her ecstatic when gold went up to 58,
Wow.
But now we're still in good shape. I mean, in terms of she's still in really good shape on this project because she's locked in at 48.50, and it's over five, and it seems to be settling over five. So that was a good thing. Yeah, deposit in my case locks it in because at that point I set aside or go buy the gold for that project and it locks it in. But I would add that pricing materials, like many relationships, it's complicated. You know,
Yeah.
if for example, like somebody I'd never seen before comes in and orders something and it's really only going to amount to 6 grams of gold anyway, I'm going to get the same markup that I was getting when gold was 700 bucks an ounce. Um, that being said, this recent project that I'll refer back to is, it's going to require quite a bit of gold actually. And because of the volume, the number of items that she's ordering, and because of the volume of gold that we're going to be using, and plus I'd made a ton of stuff for this family in the past. So I'm definitely compromising my markup in that case, to, make a customer, not just to make her feel good, but to be fair to her, because I think I can count on this family coming back to me again in the future. And I don't want to ever do anything that would compromise that relationship. So I give them a little better deal. I'm still coming out okay in the project, but, so that's the complex part of pricing, and how I feel about, maintaining my margin just the way it was for most cases, but then having the ability to compromise under circumstances of a long-time client and a high volume precious metal project.
Yeah. So uh, I just got these statistics today. Since the first of the year, we have 27. We've taken in 27 full blown custom jobs. The thing that has changed is that we typically don't use customers' metal to recreate something because of the FTC guidelines and this, the difficulty. I don't like casting customers metal because we have to have the button and we can't. But I will hand fab with customers metal, and I'm seeing that rise more and more. Customers want us to use their metal and hand fab with it. So then they are really just charging the labor fee and it's their gold. There's no markup there at all. And I think that a lot of people, it's as the price of the metal and materials is getting more valuable, it's getting more sentimental value too.
Hmm.
So we're having people that saying, these are my dad's rings. Can you please make my ring out of this metal and stuff like that? I think that's a side effect of it, which I find pretty fascinating. And
Right.
it's a good thing we know how to hand fabricate because a lot of jewelers don't know how to hand fabricate. And it takes longer to hand fabricate, but I think that you get a better product.
I've recast clients' gold pretty much from the start of my career. I don't mind doing that at all. Sometimes it takes a little algebra
Yeah.
to be able to figure out how to do that correctly. But here's how I handle that. I have basically I have two types, well, two buttons, or two types of gold in reserve. I usually keep pure gold and then alloy it to spec when I'm casting fresh gold. So that's one button and one stash of gold. But I also keep a salvage button, you know, and so everybody who casts knows that it takes more gold to cast something than the final weight of the object, right? So you're
Right.
left over with this button of stuff that and I maintain. I test it periodically for purity, so I know, for example, that it is in fact it it is 14 karat, and if I have to add a little gold to it occasionally to bring it up to standard, then I do that. But that way, I feel really good about I'm not mixing client's gold with my fresh gold inventory, but I recast. In
So what happens if you get 10, if you have a customer who wants to bring in 10 carat and they bring you 10 carat, you use your regular button? Doesn't that degrade your button?
Well, no, most clients are going to want 14 or 18 karat gold, but Jesus, you've opened the barn door, so I guess I'm gonna scurry through it. You're aware that I was going to roll out this new digital resource that I
Yep.
had just created. So here's the deal. I've had a spreadsheet that I created years ago that handles this exact situation. I've got an alloy converter spreadsheet. But, and I showed it to a few people, and everybody always wants a copy. And in some cases, I've been pretty generous handing it out. But I'm going to reveal right now. I'm going to switch scenes here, and we will. Let me bring. All right, due to my ineptness with OBS Studio, I created a separate scene for demonstrating this new digital resource that I've created, but I forgot to add audio to that scene. So what you're seeing here is a PWA file. It's basically an HTML file with a ton of code behind it that does the algebraic calculations it takes to both do alloy conversions and there's an aspect of it called scrap mixing also. And what I'll explain, what I was just orbiting around there was the first thing it does is goes online, gets the current price of gold, and there's a little, it displays it both in cost per ounce and then cost per gram. And there's a little button there that you can refresh that at any point to get the right now in the moment price of gold. I think I'm showing that refresh button on the screen right now. But then on the alloy conversion side, let's say, for example, you have a client that has, 4 grams of 10 karat gold, 6 grams of 18 karat gold, and 15 grams of, or 10, or excuse me, 6 grams of 14 karat gold and 15 grams of 18 karat gold. So you plug in the quantity on the left hand or
at the top there, 4 grams of 10 karat gold in that left side window, and you want to convert it to 18 karat, you get an immediate screen display that tells how much pure gold you need to add and what that's going to cost you. Now, if you change this to 6 grams of 14 karat gold, still converting to 18, the data output screen updates immediately. It's going to cost you $643.90 to add 4 grams of pure gold with 10 grams of total volume there. And I run through a couple of calculations as I do this here. Let's bump over to the scrap mixer side. On this side, the same price per gold display, and you can refresh it on this side of the screen also. There I demonstrate refreshing the screen. Price displayed in per ounce and per gram. And so let's say you're buying from your client or trading it in. They have the same 4 grams of 10 karat gold, right? Then you add their 6 grams of 14 karat gold, and then you add their, what did I say, 15 grams of 18 karat gold, and this screen will immediately update. And the big number there is the average purity in carats. So if you mixed all this together, you'd have 15.76 karat gold. You would have a total volume of 25 grams. And the pure content down here, I can't read it on my monitor screen, but it's 16.4 something, I think. And this is the total collateral value in the lower right-hand corner. It'll display the total collateral value of all 3 batches of scrap combined. And so then if you're buying it, you're not probably going to buy it for collateral value. You're going to take that number times 0.9, or actually most pawn shops, I think, give about 65% of content value to people who walk in off the street. So anyway, that number times whatever your buyback percentage is what you're going to use that for next. And so again, this is a digital resource that I'm offering on the Gary Dawson Designs website under the More tab as a digital resource. And the cost for this is $14.99. I hope you find it valuable. I'd love to, if you buy it, by the way, there's good chance I'll be adding features to this app over time. If you pay for it on the website, I will send you the app in an email. Plus, there's a password screen. I'll send you the app and the password very soon after I get your order on the website. And this is something I think that could be high value if you're mixing scrap alloys and or buying gold off the street. So this is not meant to generate a ton of profit, but I did put quite a bit of time into this. And if you purchase it, make a one-time purchase, I'll be happy to send you any upgrades as they emerge. And I'm very happy to have you take a look at this and give me feedback for it. And if you don't think it's a good enough value, I'll refund you money. You just got to promise never to use it. Okay? All right, we're going to switch back to your normal content.
All right. Well, what else do we want to talk? I kind of expected a little more audience participation on this. If anybody is, in fact, watching this live stream, we'd love to see your comments. We'll stay up here for at least a few more minutes to see if anybody pops in with comments, and chat it to the YouTube, and we'll respond to it as best we can.
So how was Tucson?
Tucson is amazing as always. I've gone there for, God, I don't know, 30, 35 years, almost every year. You and I, or at least I think you've taught in Tucson too, right?
Yep.
When I lived in Oregon, I'd often get paid to go down there and teach at the AGTA show for MJSA.
Yeah, we both taught for MJSA there a couple times together.
I think we
Yeah.
did. That
You
might
kicked
have
me out
been.
to this Really cool restaurant. I remember that.
Huh? I don't remember. There's a bunch of cool restaurants. Tucson's kind of turning into a foodie town.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember the year my book came out, or the book I edited for MJSA. I went and I worked. Remember, I worked all day at the show, and then Rich drove me over to my hotel room, and I got there, and they had sold my room,
Ah,
and I had read the reservation for 3 months. Um, Fortunately, I was able to get another room, but that was a little terrifying. I was like, "Where am I going to stay?" And the hotel just didn't care. They were like, "Yeah, we got double what you paid for the room, so we don't care."
yeah, exactly. It used to
That
be
is the
brutal.
way it is.
One year when I had my store, I drove down in my RV. I took my kids with me, and we went down in the RV, and we were parked in a hotel parking lot. And the my employee flew down later on, I think he flew to Phoenix, rented a car because you couldn't get a rental car in Tucson, right? Drove down, and there was no hotel available uh, anywhere in Tucson. He had to drive halfway back to Phoenix to find a highway hotel to stay in because I didn't have room in the RV with both me and my two kids in it.
Ugh.
But yeah, it used to be crazy. It's not that crazy anymore. The show's changed considerably over the last 3 decades. Um, it used to be you could buy anything from have your aura red to pixie dust to, huge gold nuggets. Well, you can still buy the huge gold nuggets there, but it's less of a bazaar now in the hotel strip than it used to be. But it's still a fantastic show, and I love to go. I was able to do everything I needed to do in one day. This time, I didn't have
Really?
a lot. Yeah, I just had a few things to get for one of my projects. Um, so I was able to do that and meet with some friends and do everything. I was going to go back for another day, but then I got busy in the workshop and didn't end up going back.
Well, speaking about busy in the workshop, I need to get back to work.
All
So,
right, buddy. Well, thanks for participating.
sir.
This has been your Benchworks, the podcast for bench jewelers. I'm Gary Dawson signing off, and Joel McFadden, and we'll see you next time.
All right.
Adios.